Hey, what's up, everyone? I am a little bored. I've got a rare few minutes here, so I thought I would just kill some time with whatever EU stuff comes to mind. Nothing's coming to mind, so I'm not sure. I might have to wait for folks to come and provide some ideas. Um, but I'm flipping through some things to see if I have any notes. What's been on my mind lately about the Star Wars Expanded Universe? Um, I don't know. It's a good question. I've been going through a ton of promos still. I'm posting videos about promos. There's still so much more to come. And then what's nice is after that, I'm going to start diving back into a very, very, very long series of videos about all of those third-party RPG mags that have original Star Wars EU content in them. So, if I did just a video on one of those a day, that would last for about half a year. There's so many. But the thing I'm thinking about right now is uh, doing a list. I mean, lists in general, but I'm particularly focused right now on posters, and I'm thinking about putting together like just my own personal list of like the top 5, 10, or whatever essential EU posters. Um, when you think about promo materials, there's obviously a wide variety of things to collect, to share, whatever, to pick up, to hunt for. I've been, sharing I'd like to think a pretty wide range of different types of promos, everything from bookmarks to posters to sell sheets to shelf talkers to T-shirts. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But if I really had to pick, I think my favorite thing are posters. I've talked before about how I think I'm a collector first and a Star Wars fan second. I'm really sort of like a poster collector first. I've always been, I mean, for anything I've been into, bands, toys when I was a kid, sports, whatever, it's always been about the posters, the images, right? And that's why, for me, there's nothing better than, say, like a Star Wars EU promo poster that has, you know, um, like images of the thing on it, right? I want to see more of that. That's why I like posters. They do that really well. It's a great medium for just reproducing the things elsewhere in the fandom that you really appreciate. So I want to put together a list of like essential posters, what I think are essential EU posters. But the trick there, off the bat, is you have to define like what do you mean by essential, right? And I think what I'd want to say is, um, what are the things that I think sort of tell like the broadest story? What are the things that like not the super hard to find things, right? Things that are like reasonably sort of within grasp of any sort of fan, right? Like what are the things that if you were going to boil down to uh, well, shoot, now you're inspiring. Maybe I should. Maybe I should. Um, what's up, Alex? Thanks for stopping by. Um, feel free to join, by the way. I'll send a link your way if you want to come and hang out for just a little bit. I don't know how long I'm going to be on here. But let me see. Let me drop this in there. Let's see. Drop this into a couple of random Discord servers. So yeah, when it comes to like what is essential, I think like, hello there. How's it going? I'm thinking in terms of not super hard to find things that I think are representative of Star Wars, things that, but it's tricky because my mind immediately jumps to things like, well, what are like the most iconic images, and are those images on a poster? Then get those right. And I don't know if that makes sense, but good morning, happy Friday! Wow, already Friday there. Yeah, happy Friday. Good to see you. So I think like it's tricky. I think you can make a list of essential posters, just like the basics, right? Like what are the obvious things you need to have, and then I think you can make a list of like what are the most iconic posters. You could go a little bit more elite too, and sort of say from like a hardcore collector's perspective, what are the posters that if you're a hardcore collector you should expect to see in someone's collection, right? They might be hard to find, but they're the sorts of things that you should strive to sort of collect, right? And I'd say starting with just like an essential list. I sort of jotted down a couple of ideas, and I could maybe do a separate video about this, but I'm sort of brainstorming here. The first thing is to say, like, if we're talking about EU, we're not necessarily talking films, right? Although, you might as well broaden it to Star Wars sort of writ large, right? I've said this before, like I don't really collect a lot about the films, which is maybe sort of ironic to a lot of folks, right? But what has always interested me about Star Wars is like, continuing the story beyond the films. I have the basic set of posters from the original trilogy. I actually have more from the prequel trilogy, but beyond that, like just never been a huge fan into sort of collecting those for whatever reason. But I do think, like I'd say, like dealer's choice. If you're trying to build an essential list of or essential collection of Star Wars posters, when it comes to the six original films, like whatever dealer's choice, whatever is your favorite version. There's so many different sort of main versions. I would say probably with one caveat that with the prequels, I sort of think it's the Drew Struzan set that you I think is probably the one that would be the most essential. Some of the variants are really cool, fun collectibles, fun images, fun posters, but like, are they essential? I'd say the Struzan prequels and then Dealer's Choice from the original trilogy. Um, I'd say beyond that, I probably would say if you just think categorically about the elements of the EU, so like, is there an essential book related poster, is an essential comic related poster, game related poster? I'd say if you're thinking of books, I think you'd have to think of Heir to the Empire just for its iconic status, right? And I've shown a video or I've shown a poster in a not terribly too like long ago video about a retail poster that it wasn't a promo. You could buy it. You could still find them. Um, for the Heir to the Empire art, it's like the cover art, right? And I think that's probably an essential one. It's just so iconic. It's so important. You know, the book's so important. The artwork is so iconic, right? Whatever else you think about the book, it obviously holds a special place sort of in the Star Wars expanded universe. And I think that as a poster, I think that's a good way to go. And I think what's nice about it is, again, because it's not a promo, it's accessible to anyone, right? You can, it's not like technically in stock anymore. It says starwars.com, but you can find it, you know, somewhat readily on eBay or whatever. I think the other thing for books is another poster that I shared maybe 2 months ago. And it's in my mind the greatest Star Wars promo poster ever. And it's from Del Rey. And it's the one that if folks saw this, with the exception of about 3, 4, or 5 books that came out in 2013, 2014, before the EU was discontinued, it's got the cover art for every adult Star Wars novel. And I think in terms of like building an essential poster collection, what an efficient way of sort of just maximizing everything Star Wars book related, right? By just having that one poster. I think it speaks volumes about the depth of Star Wars and the role the EU plays in Star Wars. I think it's an essential poster. Unfortunately, a promo poster, a very difficult one to find. This next one is totally just subjective, right? But I think it's something related to the Tartakovsky Clone Wars, and that's a really eccentric personal choice. But to me, it's tricky when you think just in terms of like Star Wars shows. There's tons of related posters, right? Everything from like the Ewoks movies to posters you could find from like related to like droids and Ewok shows and stuff. When it comes to Clone Wars, though, obviously I, like many Star Wars fans, place that Tartakovsky show pretty high up on pedestal, right, in the context of the EU in terms of storytelling. One of my favorite things of all Star Wars. But there were 3 posters. I've highlighted them in a previous video, which you can see now on a playlist I've created the channel just related to Clone Wars related stuff that I've been making videos about. The posters themselves, the images are so perfect. They're so wonderful that I think that alone like vaults those posters into sort of essential status. So I'd say the 3 main promotional posters for the 3 sort of quasi seasons of the micro series are great. I think in particular the first one, if you had to pick one, I'd say that's an eccentric choice here because it's not super easy to find. It's a promo poster. It's not super accessible, but and it's, you may not think that of all the things to do if you're building just a really, you know, sort of tight, small little list here of essential things that really sort of fits the bill over other things. But the image to me is so perfect. It's just speaks Star Wars to me, and I think I'd slide that in there. I think if you're thinking of games, this is tricky for 2 reasons. One, because you know, people just have different gaming experiences, and you know, I've talked about how like I'm not a modern gamer, but I was playing Star Wars games from the early 80s through through the early 2000s, but never really got into sort of like the modern sort of MMORPGs, which is why there might be a bunch of things, say, Old Republic related, posters related to any of those games from that era that someone might say is an essential thing. The thing from my point of view is that as a collector, there are so many different things now, both promo and sort of retail, and related to KOTOR and SWOTOR and everything, that there's so many that I think it's hard to say that there's one sort of conventional consensus pick for which poster and which poster image really rises to the top. There's so many different promos, from store displays to standees to countertop displays to pre-order forms, to this new era in which, you know, every game store across the planet, right, has had different sort of tie-ins, things like that. It's really tricky, I think, to sort of decide what's the consensus pick. Whereas I think with a much earlier game from a different era, Dark Forces, I think, to me, the Dark Forces poster that is basically a straightforward reproduction of the cover art from that box is so iconic, and is something that I think is an image, at least, that you saw so many times as an older Star Wars fan, and even now, right, it's constantly reproduced. I just published a video today in which part of that image is reproduced on a poster related to LucasArts archives. You see that so many different places. It's the poster, I just think, is so iconic. The image is so iconic that I think beyond just it being relevant to gamers, it's something that I think for a very long time was one of the most recognizable Star Wars images, just that Dark Forces box art. And I'd say that poster, I think, to me, slides into the top. Well, that's cool. Yeah, well, that's right. I mean, there's a lot of cool things. Yeah, I mean, it's neat. I've been seeing more and more of this. A lot of really neat custom stuff. A lot of people do this too with they're making custom frames and things for like magazine and comic book print ads. Now, that's a really tricky area for me. There's often print ads you'll see for Star Wars EU content that's really, really cool, that actually in some cases sort of produces art or embellishes it in ways that you really don't see anywhere else. For whatever reason, despite the fact that I'm an obsessive sort of Star Wars promo collector, I've always been a little reluctant to get into the advertising sort of collecting, primarily because in most cases that stuff was included like in Star Wars magazines that I already have, right? So I don't want to go about either defacing them by pulling them out or buying a duplicate copy. And the other thing too, you got to get tricky. It's tricky on eBay, for instance. You'll often see people sell things as posters, and in reality are just print ads. You always have to be really kind of careful. But that said, they're gorgeous. They're really great things to sort of display like posters. Hey, what's up, Scott? Good to see you. Hey, that's great. My videos have become part of your morning routine. Well, that's fantastic. Thanks for telling me that. Hey, what's up, Stevie B? I'm enjoying your channel. Folks don't know, Stevie B has started a channel, just kind of a cool, chill sort of Star Wars writ large sort of thing, showing off Star Wars hauls and thoughts and stuff like that. So it's a cool channel. I hope folks check that out. So yeah, I think Dark Forces. There's a couple others that I think you have to slide into an essential poster list, and one is also a promo, and it's from Dark Horse. It's 11 by 17. Folks have probably seen this image, and it's basically a beautiful sort of art rendering of the entire expanded universe, right? There's basically every character you can imagine. And on the back, there's sort of a legend that sort of breaks down who they all are. I'll show it on a future video, but it's really a wonderful giveaway. I think it was given away at San Diego Comic-Con. You find it in a number of different places. It's represented in a number of different places throughout the EU on covers and things like that. But again, because it just does such a great job of sort of maximizing space. If you're building the essential poster list, a poster that gives you basically, 100 different EU characters from across the entire range, all the way up to like Legacy. Yeah, I think that's something that has to be considered essential. And I think the final one is tricky too. I mean, there's a promo poster given away by Del Rey, I think at San Diego Comic-Con, maybe around 2011-ish, I think, sometime around then, around the time of the Pablo Hidalgo Essential Reader's Guide. It's basically a reproduction of that Reader's Guide, the Reader's Companion cover art, with Yoda reading books of the expanded universe. I think that might be an essential one. Now, what's tricky about those sorts of things is those smaller promo giveaways, sometimes that have like machine press folds in them that are smaller. Again, you're not talking 24 by 36 or movie poster size. They're technically posters, right? But they're sort of different. They're in a different sort of space, kind of different category. Do those really count alongside, say, a movie poster or one of these, like the Heir to the Empire art poster? It's like maybe, maybe not. Just depends on your list. But I think if you're thinking of essential and iconic sort of images that you'd probably want to see represented in your Star Wars poster collection, maybe up on the wall. It's hard to think of many images throughout the EU that do a better job of showing an important Star Wars character, right? But doing something meta by recognizing, the Star Wars EU itself, right? I mean, Yoda's literally there reading Works of the Expanded Universe, right? So there's something very cool about that, right? Really sort of, if you're really thinking essential EU posters, a poster that is both Star Wars and in essence about the EU too, you can't go wrong, so thanks for saying that. Yeah, it's been fun to show these relics, although I don't like to refer to them as relics for one reason, because I sort of feel like I don't want people to think that this is all dead, right? There's something about relics to me that makes it sound like it's, Indiana Jones sort of digging the stuff up out of the ground, right? I'd like to get people excited about all the stuff that came before, right? Just to sort of convince Lucasfilm, right, that there's lots of interest in continuing this, right? You know what I mean? But no, I really appreciate you saying that. Well, thank you. Hail Christopher Nelson. It's a message I definitely support, but hail the Sentinel too, because the Sentinel, I saw you maybe last week, maybe it was earlier this week, I don't know, on Matt Wilkins' channel, talking about how you were sort of just hanging out, listening to 80s Kiss. And I don't know if I saw that at the time or later, but I wanted to jump on and say, man, let's just do an entire stream about 80s Kiss music. So, because I'd be down for that. That would be a lot of fun. So I'm really glad to hear at least there's one other person out there in the Star Wars Expanded Universe listening to 80s Kiss, because I do pretty much every day, some way or another, find a way of listening to some 80s Kiss. I'm really into Animalize right now. Those machine folds are, they're tough, man. For anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, sometimes posters come, folded, right? Sometimes they come folded, becomes some idiot who owned it, folded it up or something for some bizarre reason. But the ones that, like you'd say, would find in a magazine that open up, right? It's a machine fold pressed. Hey, glad to see you. Yeah, thanks for being here. And this is I'm glad you mentioned this with these like Galaxy Magazine insert posters. Galaxy Magazine was so great. I think every issue came with really cool posters, like really, really cool ones. The sorts of things that you do also occasionally see like on eBay, people selling as if it was a standalone retail or premium poster or something. They're not, but like they really could have been, I think my favorite one is one that's like, there's just like a floating image of like George Lucas's head. And I think, is that the one that on the other side? Well, there's another one too, that's basically sort of an homage to all of like the 90s Struzan book covers. It's great. Again, for me, that's the classic case of checking all the boxes off the list, right? Give me a poster that's just images of other EU books, right? But the posters in that magazine are fantastic. Those magazines are worth tracking down for the posters alone, right? Yeah, absolutely. That would be great. We'll definitely find a time. I don't get a lot of time to do these, right? But definitely, I'd love to do more. Love to, talk more EU. Thanks. I appreciate it. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, believe me, it's just the tip of the iceberg. The really scary thing is that just when I sort of think I've got like a pretty cool collection that I want to sort of show off, right? I've got videos lined up for at least the next year. There's that much just sort of crap in my collection, right? And stuff that I almost forget about, and one reason why I started doing them is because I've just been collecting this stuff forever and sort of taking for granted, right? I mean, sometimes even when I'm thinking, oh, what's the next thing to make a video about? I look past something because it's just become part of the furniture of my sort of Star Wars collection. I forget that it's like a unique thing. Sorry, this sounds like I'm trying to like brag or flex. It's more just that like, this is just my obsessive, nerdy sort of little hobby within the Star Wars EU. So it's been fun to share it off. But, every once in a while I think, yeah, I've got like a lot. Wow, this is great. It's a fun, and then I'll go on some random Facebook group and I'll see stuff that I never even thought was imaginable. And then I realized that my collection is nothing compared to some of the things out there. It's this amazing community of collectors out there who had the foresight to hold on to some of this stuff, particularly stuff that like from outside North America, things that I didn't even know were possible that I couldn't get. I was fortunate to spend some time overseas here and there and pick some stuff up at the time, right? That I wouldn't have been able to figure out otherwise. But some of the stuff I'm seeing, like really old stuff too. There's at least one Australian on this stream. There's some amazing stuff from Australia too. I actually just highlighted one earlier this week, but really neat stuff from like Scholastic Star Club. I mean, this really, really cool stuff that you wouldn't even know about being in North America or the UK. Did you know my uncle got divorced and now he has to pay slave payments for the rest of his life? Okay, I didn't know that. I'm sorry to hear that. The most obscure thing I've been looking for. Yeah, that's a fun. What's my white whale or holy grail? Good question. Gosh. Well, I can tell you that I can tell you what some of mine were. I mean, I've said this before. Years ago, one of my grails was the Dig magazine. The Dig magazine that contained Lost City of Tatooine, the sort of obscure, but really good, I think, important story I've done videos about. It's this children's archaeology magazine for anyone who's not familiar, and it's like, yeah, go figure. They put like an original Star Wars story in, but really, really hard to find, right? And when I years ago when I was able to track one down, I just couldn't believe it. I sort of thought, wow, finally. That was one of those things I remember thinking, like, gosh, like the collector in me is always going to be driven crazy by sort of knowing this thing exists, but just knowing that I'll never be able to get it. And then when it came my way, I couldn't believe it. So that was one, if I'm going like way back in the day, I mean, I'm trying. That was one. Pizzazz magazine was one. Marvel did this like maybe like 12 something issue. I did a video about it years ago. Pizzazz magazine was something that was kind of like again, published by Marvel, magazine style, supposed to just be kind of like a pop culture magazine, but they would occasionally put original Star Wars comics in, all of which were collected later in some of the Dark Horse omnibuses. But being an obsessive collector, I wanted the physical copies, and that was something that, again, a number of years ago I picked up. But that was a grail because it's one of those things like I knew about, but didn't ever think I'd ever have a realistic way of getting them. Anyway, I'm trying to think right now. Right now, when I think of promo, here's the thing. I have every bit of Star Wars content ever published, including things that weren't published. And so one of the reasons why I got into promos and things like that is because being the collector, I wanted to kind of like keep going, like what else could I collect? Promos seemed like a good way of, I wanted to formalize my, promotional collection by keeping that going. And I think that it's store displays right now. I have most of the store displays for the Bantam and Del Rey releases. But I'm focused on some of like the young adult books and stuff like that. So like Galaxy of Fear, there's like a bookstore display, like a book stand it's just evaded me for years. And what's really cool about it is it has sort of like the same prismatic effect on it that like the book covers have. So I'm hoping to get that. And for some weird reason, there are a couple of Del Rey, like more recent Del Rey book displays that I just have never ever seen either on the market or anyone else's collection. I don't know why these newer ones are harder to track down. I mean, you even occasionally, I've now seen two in the last year, like Splinter of the Mind's Eye bookstore displays. It's like, wow, that's crazy. People hold on to that stuff, but like really hard to find more recent stuff. So yeah, if people ever find Star Wars book displays, please let me know. I'll make it worth your while, sort of pass along that information. Yeah, I've got 2 Dig magazines now. It's pretty unbelievable. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, I mean, for a while there were definitely gaps in my collection, and you can trace it precisely to when like either I was in school or had no money or was like in between jobs and things like that, right? But yeah, there's some great Force Unleashed things. I'll tell you what, in terms of I mean, there's action figures, there's so many cool things. Just in terms of sort of the more like harder to find like in-store displays and stuff. I mean, the Force Unleashed, I think, really begins a new era in video game store promo collections that in some ways is really hard to keep up with. And I mentioned this earlier, but like with something like KOTOR or something, or SWTOR, I mean, it's nearly impossible to even really sort of understand the full list of things. You're always seeing things and elaborate things like 6 foot tall, in-store cardboard displays. And I mean, just amazing stuff, right? And practically every country that's sold, there's German exclusive promos, there's UK promos. I mean, the list goes on and on. It's really insane. But the Force Unleashed, I think, really inaugurated this new era. And I'm trying my best to pick up stuff when I see it. But like, I think the thing that really sort of changed there is it's like every video game store and every even like rental store, like Blockbuster, all of a sudden started having like co-branded Force Unleashed promos, from posters and displays and like counter displays and pre-order forms. And it's just crazy. And then the t-shirts alone, and it's just insane. So I do too. I've always had this weird thing. I try my best not to get into action figures, right? But a couple of those things, particularly with like, given that it was like EU related, it's like, yeah, it was hard not to indulge a little bit. Hey, what's up, Evan? Thank you. Nice new haircut. I appreciate that. I hate my haircut. And this goes back to the Sentinel who was listening to 80s Kiss. Most of my life, my hair's been past my shoulder. I've always had long hair. I know this doesn't exactly look like short hair to people because it's a little wild now, but I appreciate the compliment. But just a quick background. Every once in a while, I have to get a haircut for professional reasons. And I hate it. I hate haircuts. And I got the worst fucking haircut I've ever got in my entire life. And I had to go back to a different haircutter like an hour later, and just to try and clean it up. Folks probably haven't seen me on camera like in like 2 months or something. Like they gave me like a mohawk. It was bizarre. So yeah, anyway, but I'm glad you have to look at it. So I'm glad you like it. But let me try and see. Oh, this is something I'm going to grab speaking of like young adult book store displays. I'll be right back. So this is something Scott Johnson has seen. So this was a more recent acquisition. Now it's actually it's inside a frame, so I can't open it up, but you can kind of get a sense of how big it is. I mean, this whole piece here, this sort of folds open. So this is a gigantic, 3 foot tall header for Young Jedi Knights that would have gone on top of an even larger stand selling all of these books. So this type of thing is has been pretty exciting to find. So again, like I said, I've got most of the book displays for adult books, right? And I'm trying to get like the young adult stuff now. So, but yeah. Let me see here. Yeah, it's cool. And it's things like that like you sometimes, I mean, I've known that something like that exists and things like that. And there are several different Young Jedi Knight related like bookstore displays. And the amazing thing is that every once in a while you find something you didn't know existed. It's just always mind blowing. Yep, I know, Scott. We've definitely been competing for a while with some of these things. Sorry about that. How do I source this stuff? Yeah, that's a good question. Most of these things, I just like got at the time, right? So if that's what you're asking, like where ultimately did I get this stuff? I mean, there's no like one place. I mean, most of this is just stuff being sort of like an obsessive hoarder and collector and opportunist too, right? Like if I was at a con or something, I would like see something behind the counter, ask for it, right? Could I have that banner? Could I have that flyer there, right? Even if it was a promo or not. So it was kind of just kind of being there, right? So like picking stuff up at all these different cons or at bookstores, right? I'm having some friends in bookstores who would, give you that sort of thing. Just taking advantage of every sort of like promotional offer and things like that. When it comes to more recent stuff, obviously like your eBays and things like that, I've definitely gotten. I mean, this is a bit of it. I think the real trade secret is what are some of the terms that I've used now to sort of get, but ultimately I think like the coolest stuff has come from other collectors, right? So it's just been about sort of trying to create or sort of like identify little pockets and communities of Star Wars collectors of this stuff, right? I think one of the best resources out there is the Star Wars Collectors. Is it Association? It's, you can find it like if you just Google like Star Wars SWCA. So there's some people still involved with that website. We have some Facebook groups and things like that. And so it's just been about building some connections, right? Doing some trades and some things like that. And in a way, in a selfish way, one reason, the one really selfish piece about me wanting to like put more of this and promote more of this stuff on YouTube is to sort of like get more people to identify my collection, right? Who maybe have stuff and we can sort of swap, because some of the stuff I have duplicates of. And I do believe in collectors sort of karma. So I do try and make some trades and some stuff like that, but a little bit of eBay, mostly because it's the stuff I already had, right? Which is why it's taken a long time just to sort of organize it, make sense of whatever, but kind of catalog and stuff, which I've been doing for the last couple of years really. But yeah, actually just like trying to be aggressive and identify some communities, and in some cases too, just like ask, like every once in a while when I see someone, like if someone will share something online, they'll be like, hey, look at this cool thing I saw in a group. Someone shared this cool thing they found at a flea market. I just, even if it's a stranger, I'll write to that person online and say, here's my offer, you know? And every once in a while they'll say, yeah, you know, so I've gotten a couple of cool things I didn't know existed that I saw like on Twitter, and I just cold call the person and just, you know, so yeah. Um, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah. Well, listen, there's original or not, you know, I'm just glad to see more EU content all over YouTube, right? I mean, obviously, I think like finding a niche can be really important, but I love when like everyone just gives their take on books. That's actually one thing I haven't done in a really long time, which is to sort of do sort of reviews or whatever. I mean, clearly I've become just more interested in sort of like promoting the collector side of things, right? And that's what's so interesting about the Star Wars EU fandom, is that there's so many different um, sorts of like types of people within it, right? And I remember this in particular, like every time you'd go to like a Star Wars celebration, you realize that there were people who were almost Star Wars fans simply for the conventions. They just loved the art of the in-person convention, you know, and they were people whose most important collectible were like the swag buttons you'd get there, right, and stuff. But it's so cool. It's just really neat to see it, and it's obviously true that more and more people are sort of joining the fandom all the time. I think that's great, and I think they're doing that largely because there's original or not, there's just been a proliferation of people talking about the EU, right? Which I just think is wonderful. So, hello. No, they didn't. And Scott knows. Yeah, exactly. And that's who I was thinking of when I thought about that. I've had a lot of success with some really cool posters, promo posters and things like that, things that were like only available at like one event or something like that. But yeah, for folks who don't know, this guy who I now have like I do have like an offline sort of, you know, back and forth with or whatever. So I'm hoping one day to sort of, you know, see if he'll eventually agree. But this guy found this shirt that was, you know, borderline promo, but really almost sort of edging into kind of just like insider sort of like swag, right? The sort of thing that you really only would have gotten as like a licensee or something. It was if I remember correctly, it was a Bantam shirt, but it sort of listed all of the Bantam books up to, I'm going to just, you know, around 95, 96 or something like that. Now, what's interesting is I have some Bantam promo shirts, even like an insider sort of like the sort of thing that like only licensees would have had or retailers, right? But this thing I had never seen. It was just so amazing. I mean, you can't get much more meta than like a promo. It's a shirt promoting the people who promote and produce the books. It was so cool. And the guy found it at a flea market. This guy has, he's got an Instagram account. And every week he hits some flea market. I want to know where he lives because these like the most amazing flea markets. Every week he comes back with something EU related. Oh, gosh, that's right. You asked about that. No, it's not, because you might have seen me paused a couple minutes ago, and so it's just about time for me to dive off. But see, this continues the mystique of the Lightsailers game. But I will tell you, I don't know if you're if you're connected to anyone else, sort of in like the broader fandom, because there are a couple of people on this chat who might be able to tell you more in the meantime. But next time, that's maybe what we'll do next time. And I should say, by the way, when it comes to the Lightsaber game, for anyone who's not familiar, what he's talking about, or he or she is talking about, is what was supposed to be kind of like a quasi sort of sequel follow-up to Dark Empire by Tom Veitch, was actually written by Tom Veitch with some art supplied by Dave Dorman. There's a sort of a sad, infamous, tragic story about Tom Veitch, who at that point had a really strong relationship with Star Wars, was helping to sort of resuscitate it post 91 with the comics, amazing contributor to the EU. Sent the work to George Lucas, who, despite what haters think, particularly at the time, actually read through this stuff, actually read, contributions to the EU, right? Read it, loved it, then found out that there actually wasn't a contract behind this, which creates a whole host of legal and other creative problems. So the whole thing got squashed. It soured Tom Veitch really on Lucasfilm. He basically walked away. Really sad. Tom Veitch just died, which is also sad. He was in the process of writing basically like an autobiography, which I hope at some point comes out in whatever state of completion to learn more about this era. The whole point is it was called Lightsider. And a Lightsider was like a game. And the reason I say all that, even though for years I've been a little reluctant to talk about it too publicly, is that yes, I've read it. Do I have it? I don't want to say publicly, but I've read it, and I'll just say this: I've heard that it might be publicly available at some point. You want to respect the recently deceased and his estate and stuff like that. But it's possible that we'll all know a lot more about this sooner than later, right? But I will talk more about it on one of my next the next streams. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Oh yes. Yep. Absolutely. That's really cool. Right. Yeah. It's funny. Like there's a couple of like random, like there's definitely some like LA sports team sort of tie into Star Wars that is great. That I've got. Thanks a lot, man. Talk to you later. Well, everybody, did I miss anything before I go? Thanks everybody for jumping on. But yeah, I hope you keep watching. I appreciate everyone jumping on, and check out Evan's work too. Evan's got a fun channel where he talks about, where I think he, at risk of martyring himself, attempts to defend the Filoni Clone Wars and its place in the expanded universe. Yeah, keep watching the channel, and I'm going to keep trying to put something out at least every other day. Promo related, and then, as I said at the very beginning, for anyone who was around, moving into those third-party RPG mechs that have original EU content, right? And there's enough content there for every other day for at least half a year. There's that many magazines and that much content. Many years ago, I started that process, and then moved, and then had twins on top of already having a kid. And by the way, fun little personal fact, I'm going to have another set of twins. And what's really funny about this is I know a lot of people know me through Matt Wilkinson's channel, who just had he and his wife just had their second set of twins. Not to be outdone, I'm having my second set of twins too. So in one of the most amazing coincidences of all time. So yeah, in a very short period of time, I will have 5 kids, which may mean that I might have to occasionally sort of put a little break on sort of putting this stuff out there, right? So it's one reason why I want to do it now, right? And try and be as regimented as possible about putting much of this stuff out there while I've got the time. So, or before my 5 kids destroy all of my Star Wars stuff. But the cool thing is, in the meantime, they're getting into it, which is really cool. They're not old enough to really sort of dive into some of the more serious stuff, but they're digging it. Yeah, they're really digging it. Who will have the third set of twins? I don't know. Maybe they'll be triplets at that point, right? So pretty crazy. But the funny thing about being a Star Wars fan and being a parent of twins is, like, look, it's like I've said before, who would have thought that you'd be proud to actually share something with Darth Vader, right, in common, right? Sort of being the father of twins, right? So anyway, and times two in this case, right? And there are a number of interesting twins in the EU, and probably just, in the interest of promoting twin father Star Wars life, right? At some point, maybe I'll do a special video about all the best twins in the not just Star Wars, right, but the expanded universe too. There's definitely out there. So anyway, thanks everybody, appreciate it, and talk to you later. Bye.